Hi, Devin Norcross here, owner of Norcross Consulting Services. Thanks for joining me today for a full run through of my educational presentation. Today I want to start about talking a little bit about the credit bureaus. Most people aren't aware, Equifax opened in 1899. These data collection firms have been around a long time. Equifax happens to be the largest of the three credit bureaus, followed by Experian and then TransUnion. I believe Equifax is close to 10,000 employees, and I think TransUnion is around somewhere between 4 to 7,000. The Fair Credit Reporting Act was created because the credit bureaus were incentivizing their employees to dig up negative information on clients, but not positive. Amongst the three credit bureaus, we've seen multiple hacks, and now most people have some information on the dark web that leads to a lot of identity theft and fraud out there. To better understand how we're going to advise your clients on positive credit changes, we first need to understand how scores are calculated and the flow of information. I'm sure you personally, as a mortgage originator, would love it if every client you have understood this piece of information. Credit bureaus do not provide your credit score. The credit bureaus are simply data collection firms. They are filing cabinets. You can request that information. You can request the information what's in my file. You're going to do so right before you close the loan. You're not going to look for credit scores. You're just looking for new accounts. You're looking for new debts. Or you can include information from a scoring agency. If I'm buying a mortgage, we're going to use a FICO mortgage score, and it's going to be mortgage 5, 4, and 2 FICO algorithms. If I'm buying a car, they're going to be separate from that. If I'm buying a credit card, they're going to be separate from that. But the credit scoring agency is what provides the credit score, not the credit bureau. And this graph, I think, eloquently elaborates on how that flow of information takes place. One of our goals here at Norcross Consulting Services is to reduce the debt obligations for our clients. So our primary goal is to help them secure a home loan or refinance. But secondary to that is, can we reduce the interest rate they're paying on their outstanding balances? When we look at auto loans, we have three major partners here locally. We have iLending Direct, we have Yield Group, and Moto Refi, and they are great partners to help our clients refinance from a high interest rate to low interest rate auto loans. What we find is that dealerships make more money on the back end financing, it's called back end profit, the financing of vehicles, than they do on the front end profit, which is the buying and selling of vehicles. So there's usually some fantastic opportunity to reduce these interest rates through automotive refinance and help a client's DTI, possibly raising their loan ceiling, giving them greater inventory to look at. When it comes to credit cards, we do suggest on occasion, depending on the file, balance transfers. There's a site I use a lot called NerdWallet. NerdWallet comes out with a new list every month of credit cards in just about every category, whether it's a travel card, secured credit card, zero interest card. So it's pretty common for me to advise a client to go to Google and type in the word NerdWallet and then zero interest, zero balance transfer. And NerdWallet's going to give them a list of every card on the market, what their entry-level credit scores are for that card, possibly what annual APR is, what annual fees are. It's a great site to see what is available on the market at any given time. 80% of credit reports contain detrimental errors. I've got a couple examples of some really common detrimental errors here, but let's run through some items. Duplications, incomplete trade lines, identity theft and fraud, merged socials, junior-senior cross-reference files. These are items we see on a very regular basis. On this screen, we have three examples of very common errors. On the right here, we have a classic example of re-aging. Re-aging is where the data last activity gets unintentionally or intentionally updated. And that's what the FICO scoring model 5, 4, and 2 weights a collection on. The more current the DLA date, the more that collection impacts your score. What a DLA date should be is when your client's account charges off or turns into a category 9, so profit, loss, or collection, or when they make their last payment to that account. 7 years from that date of last activity, the item is supposed to fall off your credit report, and it decreases in weight over time. However, sometimes when the debt is bought and sold, or sometimes intentionally or unintentionally by the creditor, that DLA date can get updated. And in this case, the falsification of the DLA date on Experian and TransUnion leads to a 50 and a 70 point hit for this borrower, and I see this all the time. What we find with DLA dates is that oftentimes the originator is not identifying that that account has been re-aged. So the term for this again is re-aging. Very common. It is a FCRA violation. We do have attorney partners we refer clients to where this happens if we can't get an effective change from the collection agency or the credit bureaus. On the lower left, we have a duplication. Most originators are going to look for duplication in the form of the same collection or same item replicated on the same bureau twice. What we find more commonly though is a duplication is the same balance showing up twice on the credit report. So if we have a charge off with a balance, we cannot also have a corresponding collection with a balance. That's a clear violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and it's going to duplicate that balance in your debt to income calculation. Above this now we have another very common error. This is a late payment after an account has been closed. In this situation, the auto loan was traded in, a new vehicle was purchased in October 2018. November 2018, they did get a 30-day late as the dealership dispersed funds to the original lien holders slightly past due. And then December 2020, a 30-day late, 2 years after the car was traded in, populates. We also see this with student loans that are consolidated. We see this all the time with vehicles and home loans that are refinanced. So inaccurate late payments or accurate but misleading can be a big problem. All right, so a late payment, as in that dealership dispersed payments late to that lien holder, that is accurate but misleading, and the Fair Credit Reporting Act allows us to utilize terminology like that to have items removed. Now, one of the greatest tools I've been able to introduce originators to is the MyFICO site. MyFICO is Fair Isaac's own website, and what they do is they release their algorithms in a soft pull format in a pay-for platform. So an individual can come here and for the cost of $39, they can identify what their automotive, what their mortgage, what their credit card scores are, and they can let the lender know that before they re-pull credit. So maybe you have a client that's very hesitant to let you pull credit, maybe they're wanting to rate shop you against a competitor. What we can do is have that client pull in MyFICO, or possibly maybe it's someone who's in our program and we're working to amend the items on the credit history. We're seeing some great progress, but we don't know exactly where they're at and exactly when to tell you to re-pull credit. So this MyFICO site's fantastic. Unfortunately, you cannot set this up for a client. It is something they have to set up on their own, but they can simply share their login information with you and you can review that information along with your client and decide if it's time to re-pull credit or not. This is going to save money on rapid rescores and reduce the amount of inquiries clients get on a regular basis. One thing to note about this site is the home page gives you the FICO 08 score. FICO 08 score is what traditionally people tell me when they know their FICO score, and it's because it's very readily available. All of my credit cards give me a FICO 08 score. My Mint app I use for personal finance tracking gives me a FICO 08 score. That does not help me with a mortgage purchase or refinance. But if you notice in the lower half of the home page, on the left side of this image, there is a widget which says score by loan type. If you click the mortgage widget, you will then get directed to the mortgage FICO 4 and 2 model, which is exactly what you as a lender will re-pull in-house, matching what your scores will be to a T. Additionally, you can get access to all of the other algorithms. So let's say you personally are looking for an auto loan or doing some upcoming travel, you can identify which bureau of yours has the highest score. An auto loan, for instance, does not go off a mid-score. It takes the highest score, and some banks and credit unions will only work with specific bureaus. So if you're going to do some personal automotive shopping, you might want to identify which of your bureaus has the highest auto score and see if your dealership can beat that rate. That's going to give you the greatest savings on the back-end financing of your vehicle. And finally, the last thing to note on this is that there's a very large spread, even on the same bureau, based off which FICO scoring model is being used. In this example, we have easily an 80-point spread on the same bureau. There's also different scales. In a mortgage range, we go from 300 to 850. Some of these algorithms go from 250 to 900. I've seen Vantage Score models go from 501 to 990. So it's definitely not a level playing field, and you really want to make sure you have an educated decision before you re-pull that client's credit. Here we have our 360 Credit Health platform, which is a credit monitoring tool that has a ton of features that all of our credit repair clients get access to. Through here, we can update their credit to 3 times a month, so can the client. We're going to be able to identify changes. Is the credit card balance being reduced or increased? Are there new accounts being opened? Are there new collections being added? Or are there items being removed from the credit report? There's also a lot of financial tools in here. Your clients can link their bank accounts. They can link their debts like credit card debt and auto debt and pay their accounts directly through here. They can apply for cheaper insurance. They can do web privacy cleanup. Through this, we're going to identify actual progress. If we see a threshold credit score that meets your approval range, we will then green light a hard pull on your end. This will save you from doing a lot of rescores and supplements and preserve the client credit score through inquiries. Now, when we talk about FICO scoring models, we also want to talk about the Vantage Score model and what the differences are. In the mortgage space, we use FICO 5, 4, and 2. As we saw earlier, there's lots of different FICO models. However, consumers are most readily getting access to the Vantage Score model. And that's that they've really determined that paid collections, small medical collections, even small collections, non-medical, really are not a good indicator of loan worthiness. So what they've decided is they're going to take the penalty of those items completely out of the scoring model. When it comes to the Vantage Score model 4.0, which is what Credit Karma is currently paired with, there is zero penalty for paid collections in general, medical debt under 500, or collection received in the last 6 months. And what they're saying there is you have a little bit of time to identify that you have a collection, and if at that point in time you still have not paid it, then we're going to penalize you. So to compare and contrast with the FICO 5, 4, and 2 model, which looks at the data last activity, not the balance, unfortunately clients are getting misinformation through these monitoring sites. If the scoring model that they utilize through Credit Karma does not penalize for a paid collection and they're being advised to pay a collection, they're going to show that their score will increase, where indeed on the mortgage FICO 5, 4, and 2 model, what we will do is update the data last activity and the inverse will happen, their score will decrease. We've got to be very careful about what, when, and where we pay our debts. Now, when we look at the difference between the FICO versus the Vantage score model, there are some subtle differences in the pie chart of how they allocate their points. However, when we look at who utilizes these models, they're very different. FICO still is the only utilized scoring agency for auto loans, mortgage, credit card, and insurance. Consumer sites, government agencies, and tenant screening are where we most commonly see the Vantage score model being used. Now, this pie chart is called the FICO scoring model, and there's some really great information in here, and I want to make sure we really thoroughly go through it. First part of your credit score is payment history. It's 35% of your overall score, and there are negative and positive components to this. Your payment history is going to look at your on-time payments. It's going to average what we call the months reviewed column on your credit report of your open and active trade lines. FICO only awards points to open and active accounts. So if your account's in deferment or forbearance, it's not being calculated. If your account's paid off, it's not being calculated. So if you paid off your house after 30 years, if you consolidated your student loans, if you paid off your credit card and you haven't used it in 9 months, it's considered inactive. So what we find here is the system forces you to borrow. The way it interprets positive points is it averages the number of the months reviewed column of the open and active trade lines on the credit report. The way it interprets negative information is really based off date ranges. How recent is that? Late payments really decrease in weight exponentially. Same thing with collections. Items in the last 2 years are going to have the greatest weight. However, anything negative on that credit report will have some draw to the credit score. Now, here's a really good example on how to look at that. Let's say 5 years ago you purchased 2 vehicles. 2 months ago you paid them off. One of those vehicles you paid off on time perfectly, and one of them you missed 2 late payments. As you sit right now, the only thing impacting your credit score is not the 118 on-time payments you made, it's the 2 late payments you did. So again, what do you have open and active? That is how this system is tracking your credit score. 30% of your credit score is based off the credit card utilization, how many credit cards you have, and how you use them. Now, because the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, age, race, ethnicity, and income cannot affect your access to credit lines, large credit limits and small credit limits have the exact same impact to your credit score. So this 30% category is split equally between every revolving account you have. If you have 3 cards, they're each worth 10% of your score. If you have 1 card, it's worth 30% of your score. Now, how that card penalizes you, we're going to talk about in the next slide. A couple things to take away here. If you do not have a credit card, you need to get one. 30% of your score is not being calculated. If you do have a credit card and you do not use it, you are losing major points. My personal credit history drops 90 points when I do not use my credit card. If all my cards are at 0, I see a substantial hit. I go from all the way in the high 7s down into the high 6s. So utilizing your credit card is very important. Again, I'm going to say it again, FICO forces you to borrow. Now, the next part we're going to talk about is length of credit history. This is 15% of your overall score and one of my favorite categories to talk about. As I mentioned, FICO does not award any points for inactive accounts. So if you have closed something, if you have made perfect payment history for 20 years and you paid it off, you do not get positive points to your credit score. So how do we manage the FICO scoring model in a way that's going to maximize our credit score? Well, in the length of credit history, we want to have the largest average time frame. There's 4 ways we work with our clients to make sure we are maximizing their average credit history. I like Chase and Capital One for this the best, but I know Bank of America and US Bank have also been really good at reporting authorized users in the past. When I add an authorized user, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to add an older account to increase my length history, to add payment history as well. Now, the opposite of adding an old account would be to close a young account. One of the most common factor codes I see on credit reports is factor code 14. That correlates with length of time accounts established to recent. What I find is that many of the reports I work on have potential to improve their credit score by closing a recently opened account. In fact, it's one of the biggest challenges we run into within our active credit repair clients is people opening accounts while they're in the program against the advice. So again, if we add an old account, we're increasing our average time frame. If we take out a young account, we're also increasing our average time frame. 2 other opportunities we have here. Take a student loan out of deferment. If I have an 11-year-old student loan in deferment, that is not being calculated into my credit score. If I take it out of deferment and start making payments on it for a short time period, I can greatly increase my average length history. This strategy has added over 50 points to clients of mine in the past. And then the final strategy is to get activity on inactive trade lines. If your account hasn't been used in 9 months or more, there's a very good chance FICO is not calculating that into your credit score. So if you have an express card you haven't used in 2 years, if you have a furniture row card from you're initially setting your house up, an engagement ring, a care credit card for your kids' braces, think about these old accounts. If they have DLA dates in the 9 to 12 month or older range, they need to be utilized. If you don't want to buy something at that place, buy something, walk out of the store, walk back in and return it. As long as you're pinging Community Bank or you're pinging Capital One or Synchrony Bank that account has life, they're going to keep calculating the DLA date and they're going to keep giving you the months reviewed. It's going to keep adding positive credit to your score. Fourth thing I want to talk about is the ratio of revolving versus installment accounts. It is rare, but occasionally we have clients that have a very askew ratio of revolving versus installment. About a 1-to-3 or 3-to-1 ratio is as much as we recommend here. As close to even as possible is ideal for the scoring model. Depending on how old the accounts are, we may or may not suggest shutting some accounts down. If we're going to shut accounts down, we're always looking to identify the youngest accounts. But there's other factors that come into play. We don't want to close down paid off accounts and only leave maxed out accounts. It really is an algorithm. I mean, there's lots of inputs. We want to be very careful what we change to make sure we preserve the output. And then the final category of the FICO scoring model is new credit. This is where 10% of your score is impacted by opening new accounts or applying for credit. Inquiries do affect your credit score. Depending on the scoring model, there are different ranges of shopping windows, ranging from 14 to 45 days, that impact how much an inquiry is going to affect your score. In my experience, the greatest determination on how much an inquiry impacts your score is how much positive credit you have. With inquiries, typically we see an impact around 2 to 4 points from the time they're pulled to the time they're about 6 months old. And from 6 months old to year old, they're about a point. After year old, we really don't see much impact at all. They can be tracked on credit for up to 2 years. If you are in the mortgage purchase process, make sure you're not also looking for credit cards and car loans at the same time. Now, when you're utilizing your credit card balance, you are being penalized on the increasing exponential scale. And again, this is not cumulative. We don't add up all your credit limits and all your balances and utilize that percentage. We specifically look at it on a per card basis. Now, if you're going to use, as normally advised, around 30% of your credit limit along the exponential scale, mathematically, you're going to lose about 10% of the points available to that card. If you increase that balance up to around 50% of your credit limit, you're going to lose about 30% of the points available to that card. If you then go on to around 75% of the credit limit, you see a huge increase in the inflection of that curve, and you lose about 90% of the points available to that card. So as a general rule of thumb, yes, we want clients to keep their balance under 30%. Now, sometimes that's not realistic. Sometimes we have business credit cards where they use a lot of rotational debt, or sometimes we have small credit limits where it's very difficult to manage that debt in a way that it stays under 30%. So then it becomes very important to understand when your balance goes to the credit bureaus. We call this the reporting date. There's 2 dates that matter to you. Your due date when your balance accrues interest, and your reporting date when your balance is reported to the credit bureaus. So if I have a client who cannot reduce their balance to the range I want them to, can they do it for a time period? If I go outside today and I ask 10 people when they pay their credit cards, most are going to tell me on or before their due date. Scatter plot that, some are going to pay their card past their due date. How many are paying their card before their reporting date? I find that most cards, especially entry-level cards like Capital One, Credit One, First Premier, they tend to report credit card balances around 7 days before the due date. It's my suspicion they're doing this on purpose. I've called this rate spiking. Why would they want to report a balance right before you're statistically most likely to pay it off? Because that's going to increase your utilization. These are variable APRs based off credit score. It's going to allow that creditor to send you a nice little piece of mail saying your rate is now gone from 14.99% as previously agreed to 17.99 based off utilization and credit score. But if you know when your balance reports to the credit bureaus, you can structure your payments before your reporting date, and it doesn't matter if your card is maxed out 28 days of February, as long as you pay it down before the 17th. If that's your reporting date, you can utilize that card again on the 18th, and the bureaus will always receive a paid down balance. Again, best financial advice and best credit advice often fly in opposite directions. We know that paying your card down before your due date to reduce the amount of interest is the preferred range, but the best credit advice is to have a small balance going into your reporting date on at least one card at all times. How long can some of these items stay on your credit report? And there's really 2 dates that determine that. And the first one is the FTC's guideline of 7 years. Everything outside of bankruptcies or public related items is going to be 7 years of the date of last activity. So that would be defined again as your last payment to the account, or when the account turned to a Category 9, which is a collection, charge-off, or profit loss. Now, each state has their own attorney general, and that attorney general will dictate that state's preferred statute of limitations on debt collection. And what that means is there's a reasonable amount of time that that attorney general will hear cases in their court regarding clients seeking judgment proceedings. Can you garnish wages, put a lien against the property, or levy someone's bank account in the state of Tennessee past 5 or 6 years, or the state of Hawaii past 10, or Delaware past 3? And we use this a lot to identify, is it time to pay or settle a debt, or is it time to watch that debt naturally fall off the account? Many times in my past, I've had clients come to me looking to pay or settle debts that were in very short order, 60, 90 days ready to fall off their credit report. I had a client once with $50,000 in credit card charge-off debt due to medical collections from a death in the family. They were 3 months from falling off their credit report, and the client was being heavily pressured by a bankruptcy attorney to file a Chapter 13 and restructure that debt. What they really needed was just a little information on statute of limitations, and I was happy to provide it. So again, 7 years is how long something will be recorded on your credit report. It doesn't mean that they can come after you in a court, put a judgment on you, and garnish your wages, put a lien against your property, or levy your bank account. If you have these items, please let me know. We'll talk about what the options to remove judgments or remove garnishments look like. Here at Norcross Consulting, we really firmly believe that the term credit restoration needs to be broadened. It needs to be an umbrella term to include things like deletion letter negotiations, debt settlement, RLCs or rapid late corrections, where we ask a creditor to do a courtesy removal of a late payment. It should not be defined solely as the disputing of accounts using the Fair Credit Reporting Act. There are plenty of large players in the space that offer that kind of service. What we do here with our debt settlement work, we're extremely proud of. We've settled lots of debts in the 10% range, repos very frequently in the 10 to 15% range, credit card debt often around 38%. Depending on the item, depending on the age, it's going to heavily impact how much we're able to settle that debt for. And if it's moved into a legal department, meaning they are in the process of seeking judgment, or if they've placed a judgment, we oftentimes do not get as positive of a settlement as if we are still working with the original creditor or working with the collection agency on the client's behalf. Now, when it comes to deletion letters, again, this is something that we probably spend the most time on a day-to-day basis, and it's the most impactful for the credit and the most helpful for our referring mortgage partners. What we're talking about here is settling accounts directly with the creditor with an agreement to permanently delete that collection. When we can, we always try to get it in writing. It doesn't mean that the compliance department of every company will allow that. If we can't get it in writing, we will get a reporting date to identify exactly when that account will be submitted for removal by the credit bureaus. Typically, what we see is within 5 to 7 days of that date, the account is permanently deleted off the file. Credit card charge-offs, we cannot negotiate pay for deletes on. An original creditor will never agree to remove that item unless there is a verifiable bank error on their end. What we can do though is improve the credit score. Outstanding charge-offs or credit cards balances that are closed with a balance have a very heavy draw on the FICO scoring model. What you see here are actual numbers for a recent client of ours. As you can see, some of this debt was settled for as low as around 13% and as high as around 60%. The only collection present was negotiated for a full removal. Again, that is our main goal here. Every time we can, we want to get items deleted off the credit report, whether through the Fair Credit Reporting Act or by the creditor's own will. And it's not just collections and credit card charges we work on. We also work on judgments. Most people don't know that there's a fourth credit bureau called LexisNexis. If a bank or mortgage lender does not elect to add the LexisNexis credit bureau data, you may not be aware of a judgment or a tax lien or even a bankruptcy until the title company does a public record search. In this situation, that's what happened. This client had a $5,000 judgment that was identified very close to the closing date. We were able to settle that $5,000 judgment for $1,500. Utilizing certified funds, we were able to get a release of judgment and keep our closing date. Sometimes it's larger items. On the right, we have a home equity line charge-off. This home equity line was from a fantastic client of mine. Him and his wife own a candy shop on the Rhode Island boardwalk, and a hurricane took out the boardwalk along with their family business. At that point in time, they were forced to quit paying all their debts outside of their primary mortgage. Fast forward 8 years, this home equity line charge-off of $147,000 had gone unpaid, had fully fallen off the credit report, but still set as a lien position on the home. They had a very high interest rate and they were looking to take advantage of 2019 interest rates and refinance their home. We were able to settle that $149,000 home equity line charge off for $57,000, saving them $88,000 in the process. Subsequent to settling that charge off, this client was able to refinance their primary mortgage, a sub-3 interest rate. If we're not going to do a deletion letter negotiation, it's not debt settlement, how do we help these clients? We do it by a thorough Fair Credit Reporting Act investigation. The FCRA, created in 1978, states that everything on the credit report must be by law 100% complete, accurate, not misleading or obsolete, and verifiable. We want to represent your clients, make sure that the items meet those standards. So the first step is always to remove erroneous and unverifiable information. Then we utilize client savings and liquidity to negotiate deletion letters, settle relevant balances. They're going to progress the credit score in a positive manner, and if needed, remove disputes. About 70% of my referrals are HUD loans. They are FHA, VA, USDA, which means I do not have to remove dispute verbiage on medical items or non-medical with a sum total not exceeding $1,000. Now, if your personal mortgage company does not meet these guidelines, that means you have an internal overlay, but I have found that to be extremely rare. So oftentimes we don't have to go through this report with a fine-tooth comb, and sometimes we're getting a little benefit of the credit score by doing so. If we do have to remove disputes, it is a very simple and easy process. It's a free service offered by the credit bureaus. It takes 24 to 48 hours. Client simply calls, requests the bureaus to remove the dispute, and again, it's off in 24 to 48 hours. We can then re-pull credit. Usually we're identifying these issues on a soft pull on the front end. On occasion, we might be putting in a request for a rescore, depending on where the disputes are and where the mid-score falls. Most of the time, that's not the case. So again, do we even need to remove the disputes? Are they benefiting the package? And is the item in dispute really having any impact to score at all? So let's talk about what we need to succeed for you. What we are looking for is an introduction to your client and really a warm handoff. Similar to how you might refer a client to a realtor partner, we are looking for the client to be told that you are going to be their loan officer, you're going to be their mortgage lender, you're going to be their banker. It's not no, it's just not right now. Now we can take that referral in the form of an email, or we have a contact page on our website that you can put in your own information as well as the clients and browse and attach your credit report if possible. That's the number one thing we're always trying to sign our clients up for. It's just a conversation with me or a team member. Can we see what their opportunities are? With that, we do offer a 5-day cancellation window with a full refund. And the client's going to get follow-up on day 30, 60, and 90, plus a really nice credit monitoring system where they can track their progress at the same time. Now, what goes wrong? It's very important to address these issues on the front end so we have a long-lasting relationship. There's 4 main things that we see in Credit Pair that keep originators from batting 100% with these type files. Number 1 is new derogatory. About 80% of the referrals we get will get a new negative item. Sometimes it's not new debt, sometimes it's old debt that's resurfaced. Debt is bought and sold in portfolios all the time. Sometimes it is a new issue, it's a new late payment, it's a new collection. So a 3-step forward, 1 step back shuffle is not uncommon. However, we are always trying to move this client towards their goals with positive credit advice and the tack on negative items. With that being said, the second thing we run into I mentioned earlier, which is opening new trade lines. Extremely common in our space for clients to open multiple new trade lines. It is very damaging to the FICO credit score. It is something that we can sometimes get ahead of and pay off and close these items. Sometimes we can't, depending on size. Student loans, auto loans, namely, it will come to mind. After that, we have failure to establish or maintain revolving credit. So that would be either running up credit card debt, or especially in my partners in the Southeast that are very devoted to maybe a Dave Ramsey plan, the failure to even open a revolving account, even follow our advice and get a secured credit card. A couple times a year I'll find clients who have been in our program for 4 to 6 months and have been advised 8, 9, 10 times to get a secured credit card, still have not done so. So again, failure to establish or maintain revolving credit card balances adequately. And then finally, new lenders. Now this is a sad event for us because when we fix credit and a client goes and closes with an old lender or a different lender than who referred us, we don't get the good credit there. Make sure you stay in front of your referrals. We will never, ever, ever refer your client anywhere than right back to their original referral partner, but we cannot stop them from applying for loans elsewhere. So make sure you do stay in front of your referral partners as needed. Okay, a couple things I want to touch on right here on the very end. Number 1, there are multiple sites we utilize when conversing with clients and analyzing credit. I'm a fan of Credit Karma, but I'm a fan of using Credit Karma for what it's for, which is what and when. What's on the credit report, when are changes made? Credit Karma updates every 7 days if you log in every 7 days. So it's a great way for a client to identify changes that maybe my FICO has not yet updated. Again, my FICO is $39 a month. They're only going to give you the new credit scores every 30 days. Now you can pay for that information mid-cycle, but it is quite costly. If you send me a client and you do not send me a client with a credit report, I'm going to have the client do a soft pull on their credit. I like ScoreSense a lot for my initial soft pull. If you want an email link for a ScoreSense soft pull, the client pays $1. They get all 3 bureaus and all 3 scores. Fantastic opportunity, very much more informative than Credit Karma because you're going to get all 3 bureaus plus account numbers. So if I do work with that client, I need to do investigations for that client, I have my account numbers. I can write a thorough investigation, send it certified mail to the credit bureaus, have a really strong impact with that letter. And then final to that is 360 Credit Health, which I introduced early in the presentation, which is our internal credit monitoring service. Very much similar to ScoreSense, utilizes a Vantage score model, can update throughout the month, a ton of financial tools and opportunities within that. From a marketing perspective, is there anything we can do to help you? Would you like to do a Facebook Live together with a Q&A or most common credit myths? Do you have a group of first-time home buyers you'd like to do an educational presentation for? Would you like to record a Zoom and disperse it to real estate agents? If there's anything we can do to help you grow in 2021, please let us know. Again, this is Devin Norcross, Norcross Consulting Services. We service clients in the mortgage space through debt settlement and credit restoration needs. I do have a Calendly link below. If you'd like to self-select an appointment time with me, please let me know. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. Have a great day.